Thank you, everyone, for joining us this afternoon. My name is Gabe Cazares. I'm the director of the Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities with the City of Houston, and I'm very excited to introduce you to some of these great folks. In fact, I will have them introduce themselves. So let's start with Angela.
Hi, I'm Angela Rigglesworth. I'm a third grade teacher in Houston ISD and a very proud Houstonian.
Thank you for being with us, Angela. Jennifer, do you want to go next?
Sure. I'm Jennifer Vincent, and I'm a parent of a 19-year-old with a disability, and I live in LaPorte, Texas.
And last but certainly not least, we have Ricky Boussard. Ricky?
Yes, sir. My name is Ricky Broussard. I live in Texas City, Texas, and I work for Imagine Enterprises. And what I do for Imagine Enterprises, I am the peer mentor, and I go into the schools and talk to the students about self advocacy and self determination. And thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here, all of you. I'm very much looking forward to this conversation. This is a panel that would have happened in person pre-COVID when we were still thinking about having an in-person event as part of the Extreme Weather Ready Expo. But COVID-19 hit our region and has drastically changed the way that we learn and the way that we work and the way that we play. And that has certainly been true in emergency preparedness and response. Here in the Houston region and in the greater Southeast Texas region, we are no strangers to emergencies and disasters. So I'm interested in knowing from all of you, and maybe Jennifer, we'll start with you from the perspective of a parent of a person with a disability, as how has your hurricane preparedness gone this year, and is it any different than prior years?
Well, everything's different this year, but as a parent, we do have a camper. So typically we would travel, if we have enough notice to prepare. We do have our camper ready to go. We would leave town in that. I guess the difference is with COVID is that, we have, packing our mask and our sanitizer and things like that. But as overall, we're still just as prepared as we normally would be with all of our supplies, our medical supplies and equipment and things like that. So,
Ricky, how about you? How have you prepared for hurricane season this year, and has that changed at all from the way you normally prepare?
Well, I'm like the mom that just spoke, Miss Jennifer that just spoke. What will happen for me? I would take my mask and my hand sanitizer, and I would take all the stuff that I would need, and I would load up in my van, and if if I get a notice in time, I would load up in my van and go away from it and be in a hotel, and
And
I would have everything everything I would need, and I would have everything in my van ready to go, and I would go away for a couple of days, and I would be okay.
thank you, Ricky. Angela, same question for you. How has preparedness looked like in this during this year because of the pandemic?
Yeah, it definitely puts an interesting twist on things. One of the steps that my husband and I have taken is we've gone ahead and ordered full PPE, like complete head to toe, so that if I were to have to evacuate and stay somewhere where there would be a caregiver or someone that I wasn't familiar with, that way that they would be protected and I would be protected as well from a COVID standpoint. So that's definitely something that we went ahead and just kind of proactively did in an effort to protect ourselves.
You know, when we talk about preparedness, we usually hit some of those crucial things: life-sustaining medication, durable medical equipment, um, sensitive paperwork, making sure that there's a preparedness plan for your pets or service animals. But I think that it's important to highlight in this COVID environment that as part of our kit, making sure that we do have that PPE, that personal protective equipment that we need, whether that be a full PPE set or simply having a face covering and making sure that we have sanitizer available. I think are crucial component to preparedness this year that we didn't have to think about in the past, and that the pandemic has certainly highlighted. So turning to information, how are you all staying informed during this time? What's your main source of information? Angela, how about we start with you?
Yeah, I've definitely turned into a news junkie since staying home with COVID. I'm constantly watching the news. I think that I'm certain that we all really suffer from a little bit of PTSD from Hurricane Harvey. So the moment that there's conversation of the tropics stirring, I think I just go into kind of preparedness mode, even though nothing has reached us quite in the way that Harvey did. But certainly watching the news and keeping abreast of what's going on tropically is something that I do much more than I ever did before.
Jennifer, what about you? What methods are you using to stay informed?
Well, typically I also watch the news, but I'm also really try to stay focused on the different parent advocacy groups out there, whether it be on Facebook or via email, of what's going on in the disability community as a parent, because, you know, one of the concerns with COVID right now is the hospitals, you know, not being able to adequately care for our children and my daughter. So if we were to evacuate, we also have to look at what community we're going to. Is the hospital going to be equipped to manage her medically? Typically, if she was to become ill, are they equipped with the, you know, with COVID? Do they have an ICU that would be able to manage her care? So those are things I have to look at too.
Ricky, what about you? What ways are you using to stay informed right now?
Uh, I'm 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 doing the same thing like the other two ladies are doing. I'm constantly watching the news, and I make sure that if I do have to leave out of town, I make sure that I have a list, and I have a list of people that I can call, and I let them know, because automatically me and my staff, my my staff is gonna go with me, so we're covered. But when I have to leave, I make sure I give uh, quite a few people my telephone number, and I let them know, you know, when I'm leaving and where I'm at, and I keep I keep them up to date, and they also keep me up to date also.
I think you've all highlighted really important ways to stay informed. Traditional news media, whether that's television or radio, you know, particularly for a weather event, you want to make sure that you do have access to a battery powered device or multiple devices that will give you access to the weather and to the news. Jennifer, you mentioned social media, and I think that we have seen that more and more. We engage a lot with folks on social media. The Office of Emergency Management distributes a lot of information on social media. So I think making sure that we're following the official sources of information in social media is going to be crucial particularly during this time of COVID, where we have to be mindful of the social distancing requirements and those kinds of things so that we can stay informed. So, what advice do you have for officials who are in charge of messaging during these times of emergencies. Ricky, let's start with you.
Okay. For one, the one of the things I would say is when you're talking to people, the first people that's online, I would make sure that they are very well trained. And when I say very well trained, when they have to deal with a person with a disability and they need some assistance, that individual that individual, whoever it is, make sure you have a list of all your meds and everything that you have with you. Have it written down on a card or a piece of paper, and you can keep it in your wallet or you can keep it in your purse, and make sure it's laminated. And tell them step by step what meds you take and all of that, and make sure that they're trained to know how to, to make sure that they know how to lift that person, and make sure that they have people that know how to deal with a person with a disability. Because long as that they're trained and they know how to deal with it, it makes it easier on that person when they have to, leave away from their home, or they're with somebody that they don't know. But that's one of my things that I go along with. I make sure I have a list of all my meds and stuff. Do it that way.
Thank you, Ricky. Angela, what about you? When you think about messaging, what advice do you have for officials regarding messaging?
Yeah, I think that just, making sure that people um, are thinking of all, kind of thinking ahead, and in those moments of sheer panic, we just kind of often lose sight of really what our needs are, and you're just thinking of just that immediate right now. What do I need? But unfortunately, with being a person with a disability and people in the disability community, you have to think like 5 steps ahead so often. And so just encouraging everybody in regards to, no matter where they are in the process, of if they're a decision maker, if they're a first responder, whoever it is, helping those with disabilities to go ahead and think in advance of what it's going to take to live as comfortably as possible in the worst of circumstances.
Jennifer, I'll ask you the same question.
Okay, so I would think it's very important to, remind families and to refill prescriptions ahead of time, to have medications ready, supplies, extra batteries for medical equipment, to for a parent of a child with a disability to, remind families to have these discussions however they need to take place, whether it's role play or through pictures with their children. So when a disaster does happen, that they're not so traumatized by having to leave their home and their comfort. So I would think that's very important as well. And like we talked about, important paperwork. As a parent, I have to make sure I have my guardianship paperwork, because my daughter is an adult at age 19, but she's not able to make decisions on her own. And if I don't have that paperwork, then I'm in trouble too. So that's very important, to make sure that families have all of their essential paperwork with them as well.
I think you've made some really excellent points. It is worth saying that I think it would be helpful to see more disability specific messaging. We see a lot of general preparedness messaging, but I think conversations like the one we're having today, we either are people with disabilities or are caretakers, parents of people with disabilities. So we're very familiar with the community and what the regular needs are of the community. So messaging that's specifically tailored to our community, I think, is really important. I'll put this question out to anybody who wants to answer it. What are some examples of some successes or maybe some challenges that you've seen around accessibility and messaging in these kinds of situations?
I'll go ahead and I'll go ahead and take a stab at it first. I think when we're in, especially when we're in hurricane season, I think for us to do, the first thing is check out all the hotels that, and if you can call in advance and go ahead and make your arrangements, and make sure that it's a hotel and they have enough roll-in showers, because the in the hotels, the roll-in showers, they get taken up pretty quickly, and and when you express to them that you need a roll-in shower, you need to say, I need a shower, a roll-in shower, not a shower with a handle on it. Just tell them you need a roll-in shower, because I travel a lot, and I have to make sure that I'm very specific by telling them that I need a roll-in shower, not one of those showers that have a tub in it, and because that won't do me any good. So you need to make sure you call in advance and say, I do you have a room with a roll-in shower, and you need to be very specific when when you say a roll-in shower, because a roll-in shower to them, that could be just having a handle where you can grab on, and you can get in the tub. For me, I'm saying I need a rolling shower, because I already have my shower chair with me. It's all in one. It's a where I can roll my chair over the commode, and then I can get in the shower.
Ricky, I could not agree with you more. When we had to stay in a hotel after our house flooded, I literally had to go into the hotel room and tour where we were going to be living
Right,
for 2.5 months.
right,
And sometimes it's not even the phone call that's going to solve that problem. You have to actually go in person, because oftentimes the front desk is not going to be able to answer those sorts of questions. Just like you said, like, you have very specific needs, and oftentimes going and just taking a tour is a solution to those sorts of problems. Again, you're thinking 5 steps ahead of what you're going to need. Gabe, I would also say, just success wise, and Jennifer had mentioned this, just the power of social media during times of emergency. And when the phone lines are jammed and you're not able to get through 911, you've got to rely on your other resources. And social media is so powerful and effective in a time of emergency. And so really utilizing those resources that you have in a way that can get you help is something that we certainly saw during Harvey.
I think, as the other two spoke, just the biggest success is going to be preparedness for a person, especially for a person with disability, because we have, as a parent, caregiver, we have to always think about all the what ifs that other people don't have to think about, that go with our lifestyles. So, one thing is, even with the electric company, a lot of people don't know ahead of time to be prepared that they can get their physician to fill out a form to be notified, if their electric's going to be out, or to be first on the list to get repaired if they have medical equipment that requires electricity that's life sustaining. How important that is to have on file. And that does expire, so you have to renew it. I believe it's every 2 years, and then also just to have your local authorities know, where you live and what your needs are, that you have a person with a disability in your home. So in the emergency, they're not, it's already documented somewhere. So I think it's just, being prepared is the big key to be successful in a disaster.
and Mr. Gabe, we were talking about social media, and I think the biggest thing for 911, for the people that have a hard time communicating, and when 911 gets jammed up, the other one that I really use a lot, I use social media a lot, and then not just social media. I use I I text a lot too because I have to text a lot when I'm in meetings and stuff. So making sure that for when we're calling 911, because 911 they get a lot of calls every day, but making sure that they have somebody right there by the computer, and they can read the text and say, okay, we'll have somebody out there to you right away. So texting and social media, that's one of the biggest things. So texting.
Ricky, you raise an excellent point. When we're in an emergency, often the default is to call 911, and one of the challenges is that that does not work for everyone. So you definitely have raised a very important challenge in accessible communication. I also think it's worth noting that it's really important that emergency agencies and local governments make sure that the information they're putting out is accessible to a wide variety of people with disabilities, making sure that videos have captions, making sure that ASL interpreters are available for press conferences before, during, and after a disaster, making sure that the graphics that we're sharing on social media have the proper alt text, excuse me, so that people, blind people and people with low vision, can access the information non-visually. I think all of those components are crucial and successful in making sure that information is universally accessible to a variety of people with disabilities. And kudos to our own Office of Emergency Management that is working very diligently to make sure that all of these needs are met as we move forward. The final question that I have for you all today, do you have do you have any major concerns if we are hit by a storm this year? Anyone
Well,
can start.
um, what one of my concerns is making sure that the hotel is wheelchair accessible, because the the hotels that are wheelchair accessible, they get taken up real quick, and see, on top of that, we'll have to worry about COVID too. So that's one of my those are my two concerns.
I think as a parent of a child with a disability, I worry about, in the event of an emergency where we would need emergency assistance or have to go to an emergency room, with COVID. I'm just, I'm very concerned about COVID, number one, about contracting it, about being exposed, about, just needing medical care under these circumstances. And then my daughter, having a cognitive disability and an intellectual disability, as well as being medically complex, how she's going to be cared for appropriately, especially if we have to evacuate out of town and she becomes ill. So it's a big concern for us.
Yeah.
I still toggle back and forth between if I'm going to evacuate or not. Hindsight is 2020. As I evacuated in 2017 with the huge water event that we had, and we only got about 6 inches in our house, but we evacuated because we didn't know if it was going to get higher. And so we constantly are talking about, would we evacuate again, and what that looks like. And the evacuation process was so traumatic. And then when you compound that fear with the incredible fear that I have of contracting COVID, I think that that's always going to be a concern of whether we're going to evacuate or not, but certainly whether or not, if we're willing to risk being exposed to a very life-threatening disease. I don't know that there's a right answer, and I guess I hope we don't have to make that decision. But if we do, it's certainly something where we're going to have to weigh out the pros and cons.
COVID-19 certainly has change the dynamics of the way that we prepare for and respond to disasters and weather events. I am glad to know that our various departments and responding agencies that are in charge of a lot of this preparedness have been working diligently to make sure that our plans are up to date so that we take into account the challenges that COVID presents in case that we do need to evacuate. But these are very real issues that we're all having to deal with. And I thank you all for your time and for your expertise. And thank you for talking with me this afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.